heavy that it's breaking the board that is holding.
Now, after you get the tutorial up, we're ready for the connect the user interface to code.
Oh, it's almost done, so I'm going to actually get to this.
Oh, fantastic. So click that connect the UI to code. In this lesson, you'll connect the user interface to code and define some actions the user can perform. Now, our learning objectives, explain the relationship between a scene and a storyboard, an underlying view controller, create outlet and action connections between user interface elements in the storyboard and source code, process user input from a text field, display the result, make a class conform to a protocol, understand the delegation pattern, and then follow the target action pattern when designing the app architecture.
We just added 17 minutes.
Now, our elements in the storyboard are linked to the source code. Like when you're running an app, are there different things you can interface with on a screen? Yeah. You can put numbers in some places, right? Some places you can swipe. Different things you can do.
Yeah.
So that's what we're talking about. How the elements are linked to specific source code. In a storyboard, a scene represents one screen of content and typically one view controller. View controllers implement your app's behavior. A view controller manages a single content view with its hierarchy of subviews. Okay. You define the behavior of your view controllers in code by creating and implementing custom view controller subclasses. Now, here you got your identity inspector. It looks like a little driver's license. I don't know what that is. But that's over here. Everybody locate their identity inspector?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not here.
So we got 16 minutes remaining.
No. And comes up and tells you your class, module, different information there. At runtime, your storyboard creates an instance of view controller. Let's see. Your custom creates an instance view controller, a custom view controller subclass. A scene from your storyboard appears in devices screen. User's behavior is defined in view controller Swift. Okay. Now to create outlets for the UI elements, the user interface. Outlets provide a way to reference interface objects, so forth. To create an outlet, control drag from a particular object in your storyboard to a view controller file.
Just assign in my Apple ID.
Yeah, go ahead and sign in with your Apple ID.
Yeah, I don't have one. It's not.
Oh, go ahead and create one then. Create a brand new one then.
Okay. If I install down, it install myself.
Yeah.
I was born yesterday, 2018.
Okay, so we got our storyboard opened. You see it says click the assistant button in the Xcode toolbar, so the two little circles. And if you need more space to work, collapse the project navigator and utility area by clicking the navigator and utilities button. Remember, that's up here. If you click these, that'll appear. You can get that to disappear by doing that. I can through your bottom.
Okay, I just skipped through all of this, but I didn't even input the information.
In the editor select bar, which appears at the top of the assistant editor, change the assistant editor from preview to automatic.
You guys take these off of me. I need to find out some way to make it. Let's move up this here. Wow.
Damn right, Jason.
I actually find them.
Oh, there it is. It was up off the screen. So change it to automatic view controller Swift. I was wondering why I wasn't seeing it. Now this brings up our code associated with that. We've been putting code, creating code in C#. The same principles that you're using there are what you're going to use here. Like we looked at the if statement earlier today. You can put if statements in here. Like if you wanted to create an app to figure out your pay, for example, you would have them put in their hours, their pay rate, and maybe mark if it's time and a half, and then have it figure your salary. Okay. It displays the editor on the right, so you see your code here. I'm going to temporarily hide those. It says find the class line, which should look like class view controller, user interface view controller. That should be mine. It's at line 11. I think I talked about what a class is, didn't I? Remember the objects example, the Star Wars?
Yeah.
This class defines an object. So it's an object-oriented type of deal. It's given a name, view controller, and it's of type UI view controller. Notice how that's purple? Don't have to worry about that too much for now. It says below the class line, add the following. / mark, colon, and then space properties. So / mark properties.
Oh, hi, Mom.
Now a comment is just a documentation. This does not make your program run slower, does not make it run faster. When it creates your app, it actually ignores comments. So it doesn't put them in the actual app. So if you sat there and put 10 pages worth of comments, it would not make your app any bigger. Okay. Recall a comment is a piece of text and source code, doesn't get compiled as part of the program, but provides context or useful information about individual pieces of code. Comment begins with the character's mark is a special type of comment that's used to organize your code and to help you and anybody else who reads your code navigate through it. You'll see that in action later. Specifically, the comment you added indicates that this is a section of your code that lists properties. In your storyboard, we want to select the text field.
I don't even see that.
You see the one that says enter meal name?
Yeah.
That's one you want to choose.
I don't have this box. I don't have it anywhere else.
It's your main storyboard.
Okay. No. Oh.
There it appears. And so then, if you have this selected, but you also need to see your code.
Yep.
Why choose it?
Okay, I guess.
I hate these touch pads.
There we go. God, it's strange all messed up.
That's okay. Just click your text. You could just delete your constraints. Just do that. You can
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, how do you delete constraints? Because I think I'm going to do that because mine does not look good.
I'm about ready to delete my constraints too because they're.
Let's all just
Let's all just
restart.
delete the constraints. We know how to make them, we just don't.
We don't need. Damn right, JC.
Now here, if you should have this view controller scene over here.
Okay,
View controller scene.
Just calm down for a second.
Okay.
Or if you don't have it, you can probably find it up here in view. One of these.
Click on that. Okay, now wait. Say where you click on.
I don't even know where it's at,
Oh.
but it'd be up here if you don't see it. Now,
To enter meal name, then you click on constraints. Delete that.
well, yeah, you see the constraints you have down here. If you click each one of these, it'll show you which one applies to which. So if you don't want one of them,
Oh, just click and press delete.
press delete. And again, you can undo if you delete the wrong one. So like I just deleted that one because that was the one screwing me up.
I don't know how you guys are having a hard time. Mine was perfectly fine.
See, I thought mine was fine from the last week, but it didn't look fine when I brought it up.
Yeah, no, that's how mine was.
Interesting.
Let me just check again. Wait,
Did everybody get their constraint deleted that wanted this deleted?
I'm just gonna delete all of them.
I'm just leaving mine how it is because
Yeah, we're
I
just
mess it up if I try to mess it.
Yeah.
we're just learning the code, so it's not a big deal how it looks right now.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm just gonna
So-
do it then.
in your storyboard, you want to choose your text, and again, if you don't have anything showing, everything's under the view. So if you want to find where show any of this stuff, that's where you can find it. Okay. Control drag from the text field on your canvas to the code display. In an editor on the right, stopping at the drag at the line below the comment you just added. So I come over here.
It looks horrible.
I'm going to click and hold down and drag and drop this below.
Whoa, what? The meal name?
Enter meal name.
Inner meal name.
It's not there.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay. And enter below.
It's not doing anything for me.
Control. Okay, if I actually read Control and drag it, I have a real problem not reading.
Ooh, that's fancy. What did you
Popped up with this little little window here. It says in dialog that appears for the name, type name text field. So we'll call it name
I can't make that.
text field. This is whatever name you want to give it. It's probably got to have certain restrictions. Can't have spaces in it. Probably can't start with a number. Things like that.
Constraints look horrible.
Then it says to leave the rest of the options as they are and click connect.
Did you do text drop delicate? What'd you do?
Hold on.
I'm not. I like this space.
You have to push control and then if you just click it and move it over, it'll have like a blue line.
So you click that.
Right. See, I'm not getting.
You click a little bit more. What do you want to give the name first?
I'm not. What? It's not letting me connect. No.
Name text field.
It's not letting me connect. sequence spaces. Have spaces?
On your name?
That's the problem?
Maybe.
Yeah, you can have spaces.
That's a dumb
Okay.
problem.
You're right.
You right.
They're typical for naming variables, any kind of user defined, is you can't have spaces in it, you can't start the number. There's also some other things that can't have exclamation, can't have weird things like that. Okay. Now this adds a necessary code to View Controller to store a reference to the text field and configures the storyboard to set up that connection. So you take a minute to understand what's happened in this line of code. The IB outlet, it's this right here, attribute tells Xcode that you can connect to the name text field property from Interface Builder, which is why the attribute has the IB prefix. The weak keyword indicates a reference does not prevent the system from deallocating the referenced object. Allocation, deallocation refers to returning memory, returning resources to your app. Used to be when they designed Excel, you go into Excel over and over, it didn't allocate the memory correctly or the resources. And if you went into Excel like 20 times during the day, your machine would, at the end of the day, would be running so slow. It was always the same. We'd get a call from a user and say, my computer's gotten slower as the day's gone on. We ask, have you gotten in on Excel? And they said, yeah. And we'd tell them reboot their PC and then fix it. So again, that's a proper handling of memory. Now it handles that for you in some cases, so you don't need to worry about that. Okay. Weak references help prevent reference cycles. However, to keep object alive in the memory, you need to make sure other part of your app has a strong reference object. In this case, it's text field SuperView. SuperView maintains a strong reference to all subviews. As long as the SuperView remains alive in the memory, also okay. Don't worry about that overlay now. Is defining UI text field. So user interface text field, because that's what we chose, right? It was a text field. So whatever you choose and do that control and drop it on there would create that type of object. Assigns appropriate value. Okay. By the time that the view did load method is called, the system is assigned valid values to all the controller outlets, and you can safely access their contents. So what this is saying is after at this line of code right here, this is where you can put your own code, and it's already done all the initialization and setting everything up. Okay. Now connect the label to your code in the same way you connected the text field. We want to put the label where? Control drag from the label, stomping at just below your name text field property.
Yeah, I put it above.
You're all done now.
Cancel.
Okay. So I'm gonna. Which one do they want? The meal name. So I click meal name. I hold down my command and drag it.
Command or control?
Give me some freedom.
I was hitting command control.
No, I keep
Put it
right clicking
below
by
there.
accident.
And they tell us to give it a name.
Name text field.
Meal name label.
Okay, someone else do this. Me, left-handed.
Give me-
You give me.
Wait.
So,
And then click connect.
Here, I'm putting.
clearly, I'm not good enough to do this. Where is it? Thank you.
What's it doing?
You have it as a label, like what? It's not going over here.
Is it not working?
Oh, again.
Okay.
Oh, I got it. You don't need to. Actually,
Meal name field?
And yeah, they wanted to call it meal name label. I think is
there you go.
No, is that in the right spot? No, it's in budget.
Like as soon as you look.
you remember how in the previous class you declared variables? You had double and then your variable name and then int and your variable name. These are your declarations.
Huh.
We're just saying that this is a user interface text field instead of like double. We're saying this is a user interface label instead of integer. So those are declarations we're doing there.
I take it back. When does it easier?
You need help again, please.
Yes. Look at this. Look at this. Control.
Are you holding down the control?
You gotta hold down.
I've been holding it. You're not helping, Jason. Get out of here. You can't take it.
There you go, Terrence.
Okay, look. Meal.
Feel.
No. Label.
You click the connect button.
You have to hit connect, not enter. Invalid redeclaration. You put it on there twice, there it is. Already out.
Some scat.
Yeah.
Side A.
But that's also.
President spaghetti.
You could.
I can, but it's not gonna be very
Okay.
pleasant.
You could sit there and type it in. You know, but remember, see how it says invalid redeclaration?
Watch it, please.
Okay, I'm gonna get rid of that. What I just typed.
Check field, right? But my label is stack, not label.
You got the wrong component type.
You may have gotten the wrong component that was on, but I didn't do it.
Let's see.
You may have to go back and recontrol, and then change it from UI stack view to UI label.
Is that what you're supposed to see UI label or does it say UI stack field?
Mine
Which one?
says UI label.
UI
Yeah,
label.
UI label. UI label. Just says.
But UI button wasn't available for the next time. So, yeah.
I want to stand. Give me the.
So is that one that's
elevator
wrong?
test. I'd rather stand.
It says that's in stack view, it's not like label, whatever.
Hurt in these chairs, unless we can raise them.
This is fine, but this isn't.
Those ones?
Yeah.
Did you get one?
No, not right now. Put them on there.
What's this
And you can spin all the way around without hurting your back.
one? Oh yeah, you can.
So that's
No, I was gonna say
yeah.
it was there, but Clayton's not classic.
This is way better. Oh, never mind. Can't be back. Whatever.
Is it good for posture?
I already have bad posture because it's like this. So I gotta get used to it. Oh,
Join band won't have that.
no,
Yeah. Seriously.
I still have bad
You were, wait, aren't you in band?
I wasn't, man.
Oh, you weren't, man.
Okay, so I got this, and I'll hold down my control, right?
Did you not quit?
Click and drag that right below that. And leave it in label.
That's way more comfortable though.
Click connect.
Yes.
Hold on. No. Because usually when
We
I
put it in the
sit
wrong
on
place.
wall,
We put it up in here in the declaration.
Yeah, maybe you put it in the wrong place.
You put it on.
Thank you.
Okay.
Wait, we deleted the redeclaration, which was in the right place.
Oh, so you had 2 in there?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
When we did it the first time, he said, oh, shit, you have me get it a second time. I put it
Now there's a reason.
under the thing.
Some of these are called functions, procedures, subroutines, and that's why it's a little bit different than before, where you remember in C# where you could put it anywhere. Some of you declared double in the 3 or 4 lines down, so it's a little bit different in that regard. Okay. You only need an outlet to the interface object if you plan to either access a value from the interface object or modify the interface object in your code. In this case, you need to set text fields, delegate property, and set the labels text property. You won't be modifying the button, so there's no reason to create an outlet for it. We're going to be changing, for example, maybe what this says. I'm not sure why we would change field meal name up here, but we'll see in the tutorial. Okay, so define an action to perform. iOS apps are based upon event-driven. Means you've done something. You've clicked a button. You've done your finger across your screen. You've done something. That's what event-driven is. To create a set default label text action in View Controller Swift code, in a View Controller Swift, which we should already have open, just above the last curly brace, we're going to add the following code. So I'm going to go here. The last curly brace is clear down here at the bottom. So I want to click above it, like at line 26, 27, something like that. And they tell us to type in // mark, and then actions.
Under all of that?
Right, because it tells us to do it just above the last curly brace. We'll add the following. This comment indicates that this is a section of your code to list actions. In your storyboard, you want to select the Set Default Label Text button, and then we're going to control drag that to the code from the Set Default Label Text button on your canvas to the code display and editor on the right, stopping the drag at the line below comment you just added in. So, I'm going to come here. I want to choose my button, this last one. Hold down my control, drag it, and put it right underneath mark.
Control.
Now it says in the dialog that appears, for connection, select action.
Yes.
UI button.
Let's see. In dialog appears, for connection, select action.
Default label, right? No.
So it says outlet now, so we want to choose action. That kind of makes sense. We're going to perform some kind of action, write some code to handle it. Says for the name, type set default label text. Set default label text. For the type, we want to select the UI button. And it says, you may have noticed that the, let me just click over there, that's pretty easy. You may have noticed the value of the type that field defaults to any object. In Swift, any object is a type used to describe an object that can belong to any class. Specifying tap of this action method to be a user interface button means that only button objects can connect to this action. Although this isn't significant for the action you're creating now, it's important later on. Leave the rest options as they are, and then click connect. So click connect.
Do that. I don't like it. Stop it.
Need a bigger screen. But then it'd be smaller, you couldn't see it. Well, that's really huge up there. You can actually see that up there. Everybody get their actions added in?
Now, what do you change the event or argument or not?
What does that change?
You fool.
I changed the connection to action. I changed the name and I changed the type to user interface button. You get it to work?
More or less. Yeah.
More or less? Okay. Xcode adds following necessary code to the view controller set up the action method. And I tell you to I'm going to define an action. I need somebody to run to the front and get something in my mail. You could also run to the front and give me a glass of water.
Okay, now I'm just your slave.
Now that's a function, right? That I've set up. What's a function that I just declared? Go to the front. So that's our function. So that's what you're calling. And the parameter would be what do I want you to get? Mail or water. So when you're looking at this and you see the function, that's what it's declaring. It's a function. It's something that's going to be called. This is the name of it, kind of like where I said go to the front. This is set default label text. And this underscore and a sender, so the user interface button, that's our parameter we're passing in. Now notice that there's a beginning curly brace and there's a closing curly brace. Just like the coding we've looked at before, if you have a beginning, you have to have a closing. Okay. Right now, the method declaration is empty. The code to reset the value of the label is quite simple. To implement the label reset action in the view controller code in view controller Swift, find the set default label text action method you just added. So we're still there. And the method implementation between the curly braces, add this line of code. Meal name label dot text equals default text. Does that look familiar? That's what we named it, right? So remember how we set up that connection and we gave it that name? Okay, so I come here and I'm going to scoot this over. You want to press an enter after the beginning brace here. And it tells us then that we're going to type in meal name label. So meal. As you start typing it, look what pops up. It's a name you defined, isn't it?
Yep.
So if you do a tab twice, it'll fill in a name for you. And then you do a dot text equals, and no memory. What'd they say?
Equals no memory.
Default text. So default text. What am I doing? No semicolons here. That's a C sharp.
Oh, no.
Value of type UI label has no number text. No.
Yeah, that's exactly what I
So you're saying
No, I did TXT.
Oh, okay. Yeah, TXT.
I did GEXT.
Take a shortcut. I didn't mean. That's just how I write text.
label.
That's a little bit.
okay. Just press something and it once.
Actually, it doesn't matter.
Well, it says it now, and then I do.
He's got this back.
It should match
It would be the ultimate.
what
share.
you gave the name up here. Does that match now?
Yeah.
Yeah, see, if your case is different, like you got a little in here that didn't match that, that's where you get there. I say it doesn't matter because, but it's just, it does matter in terms of matching that. Now that's why that code completion is actually nice, because if you get the uppercase versus lowercase wrong, it'll give you an error. That's what he had.
That's neat.
Everybody good to that point?
Yes.
Heather, are you good? Okay. You can probably figure out what that's going to do, as you might guess. This sets the text, what it says, to default text. Let's see. Notice you didn't have to specify a type of default text because Swift's type inference can see that you're assigning something of type string and can then determine it correctly. iOS handles all the redrawing code for you, so this is actually all the code you need to write for now. Your set default label text, the underscore colon action method should look like this. They're giving you that. Checkpoint. Test your changes by running the simulator. So let's go ahead and run that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Set default text. Set default text.
Says when you click the set default label text button, let's see what happens. So you click this, and it changes that to default text.
No, mine's not letting you do it.
Mine looks
Let me see.
Dude, my text box is so huge.
It's something about something that we haven't.
Spicy meat boy.
Yes, it does. It's spicy meatball. And it's set default label text, and it says default text.
Yeah, that's fine.
Let me get my code up on screen.
I'm done.
Chris is running last time. It's fine.
Was it running last class?
DJ William over here.
How'd you do that?
I have my volume.
Oh, okay.
I'm texting.
Let's see. Yeah, my text thing doesn't come up. Yeah, the text thing just never came up.
This is what I do with my time.
My phone's falling asleep. It fell asleep, actually. Let's get it.
What is the food that you typed?
What's the fifth that I typed? Well,
I typed dash spicy meatball.
class view controller.
No, it's a completely different. All this stuff's right. All that stuff is hard.
Oh, okay. So
And something.
it's just popping up an error here.
Where's my child?
That's because this is the default.
Oh, who did I miss a call from? Hutch, Kansas. What's Hutch want from me?
So all the rest of the code over the other side is okay. So this is the main.
Stop uppercasing immediately.
It's in
There
that
we go.
app. There you go. I didn't do it.
There's you know, made a dramatic story.
Good, I'll be there in a second.
He's never irritating.
Let me try something.
Yeah. Where's my child? Oh, it's Tony Tucker. Where is she? Please, just let my daughter back. Please,
Epic dude.
Wait, so is that John Wick coming back from the theater?
No, it's John Appleseed.
Johnny.
You're
Replical.
Label. I have a text field.
Daisy, look.
Strange film.
Apple.
Oh god, that's the last thing.
Love you.
Love for days. You,
Can't see me.
knows I'm looks right. Joking. Real name label. FBI. Looks right. There's a line here, but that shouldn't matter. Sorry, but just be on the safe side.
They keep the NSA away.
No, no.
Oh, it doesn't pop up. Wait for it to pop up.
There's a little too much in this.
God, this is so sensitive.
What? You see this everywhere. Okay, for real. What? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, Talk to Kate. No, talk to Kate. Whoa. She's texting. This is right up. John! No, John! You're
Action.
Oh,
Function set default label text.
you
User interface button.
missing code for some reason. I wouldn't think that would break it. Good. Super dot did receive memory warning.
Why is it in the directors?
You think that
What did you think it was?
It's isolation,
Share.
stupid.
Start sharing. Settings.
Right,
Go.
warning.
Uh, that's where good. Don't have an Apple idea, forgot it? Create an Apple. Here we go. Apple Simulator can no longer.
The green is common, so you shouldn't need that, except for the mark, that's important to see later on. Let's try running
Good driver.
Well, I don't know. I'm gonna, we just got a little bit more of this, and I'll look at it. I'm not seeing anything. It looks like you have it set up perfectly.
Hello. Hello.
Okay, so let's go ahead and continue with this.
Okay, let's continue.
What?
I hate the fact that you can't do the next bit of code, though, but
Oh, I messed up. I put no on K beside, so it just like, give go now.
You would say now.
No.
okay.
Yeah.
Now this talks about processing user input. At this point, users can reset the meal name label to a default value, but you really want to let users enter their own meal names using the text field. To keep things simple, you update the meal name labels object text field whenever the user enters text in the text field and taps return. When you work with accepting input from a text field, you need some help from a text field delegate. Delegate is an object that acts on behalf of or coordination with another object. The defining object, in this case, a text field, keeps a reference to the other object, the delegate, and at the appropriate time, the delegating object sends a message to the delegate. Okay. To adopt it. If the assistant editor is open, return to the standard editor by clicking the standard button, so the one that looks like code. And click over here. So I go there to go to the actually. Expand the windows. Expand the Project Navigator and Utility area by clicking Navigator and Utilities. In Project Navigator, select View Controller Swift. Where's that? View Controller Swift. In the view controller Swift, find the class line, which looks like this. Class view controller. So this one right here.
If you hold it out, that would just.
After the view controller, we want to add a comma. And then the, let me resize this so we can see it. So you want to put a comma here. And then UI text field delegate. By adopting it, you tell the compiler that the view controller class can now act as a valid text field delegate. This means you can implement protocols methods to handle text input, and you can assign instances. So we can receive input, basically. So in the view controller, find the view did load, which is this one right here. Template of this includes comment. You don't need this comment in your method implementation, so go ahead and delete it. So you can delete that if you want.
Delete super dot.
No.
I was like,
Delete the comment. Okay. Then we want to, let me see, you can add your own comments to help you understand what's going on. Below the super view did load, add the blank line and add the following. Again, you don't need the comments unless you want to put them there, but this says handle the text field users. So we're going to have name, text field. You can do an enter to select that. That's code completion. Dot delegate equals self. And we won't put the comment there, just save time. When a view controller instance is loaded, it sets itself as a delegate of its name text field property. The user interface text field delegate protocol defines 8 optional methods. Just implement the ones you need to get the behaviors you desire. For now, you should implement 2 of these methods. So it gives us those 2 there. Usually it tells us exactly how to type it. Okay, so we're going to implement those 2. To understand when these methods get called and what they need to do, it's important to know how text fields respond to user events. When a user taps a text field, it automatically becomes a first responder. In an app, the first responder is an object that is the first on the line for receiving many types of app events, including key events, motion events, and action messages, among others. In other words, many of the events generated by the user are initially routed to the first responder. I think it's wanting us to type that in there. It doesn't say it, but these lines of code here. I guess I can delete them if it. Function text field I'm pretty sure they don't want them there. I'll decide here eventually. Okay. In the view controller.swift, right above the slash mark, add the following. So above mark actions. Mark user interface text field delegate. This is again meant to organize your code. You've added several of these comments so far. X lists each of these comments as a section title in the source code's function. I click in the right place. You see up here, when I choose this option, you see there's user text field delegate and there's actions. That's what allows us to very quickly go, if we have a pretty big code file, it allows us to very quickly go to a different part of the code. That's what that's doing, in case you're wondering. Okay. Let's see. You can click one of these section titles to jump to that section. Below the comment, add the following method. And this is what I was telling you up above. I didn't think they wanted it there. Normally, you would not put a function within a function like that. There are times when you can do that in programming. So I'm gonna come down here and I'm gonna type function text field should return mine's going to the next line, but
Okay.
Okay. Now I did an enter on it and put all that in there. And notice it's got the beginning curly brace here and it's got the closing curly brace here. So it set everything up for us. All we need to do is put our code in where it says code. Okay, so in this method, add the following code. You can put the // there if you want, but this hides the keyboard. So we'll say text field dot resign first responder. It's talking about code completion. When that starts typing, when you start typing, it comes up there and you see it, then oh, we're not done yet. Okay, it pops up there. With that, you can just do an enter and it selects whatever you got highlighted. Okay. We also need to return true. So I'm gonna, after this line, I'll press enter and I'll say return true. I tell one of you to run up front and give me some water. The function is to go up front, isn't it? The parameters, I'm telling you water. What are you supposed to return to me? Water. That's the same principle here. A function returns something. Now, returns true basically could mean that, hey, okay, we're done. So that's a true. Method returns a Boolean value, indicates whether the system should press the return key. In this case, you always want to respond to the user pressing the return key, so just return true. It should look like this, which ours does. Second method says we want to implement as this.
Resolve identifier text field.
Check to make sure you got everything typed same as this.
Okay, I think it's good.
The text field did end editing. Method gives you a chance to read information entered in the text field and do something with it. In your case, you'll take the text that's in the text field and use it to change the value of your label. In view controller, after the text field should return method, add the following method. Text field should return. Okay, so that's right here. We'll type function, text field. It's taking up so much space I can't see what I'm supposed to type. Text field did end editing. Text field did end editing.
Okay, I need help. Keep saying use it. Use it when there's over the fire text field. And I have everything down just as that.
Meal name label
You don't
dot text
have
equals text field dot text.
Resign. Oh, you have to have capital F and R too. I don't know what you did there. What? Hold on, I can't.
Need me to scroll up, scroll down.
Text field. Should. Text field dot design. First respond.
I don't know what's going on.
Only he has like a lot of.
I'm having errors for
You might.
absolutely nothing.
So you can't see it?
It's okay, so I have everything down just as it is, but I'm having an error of the use of unresolved identifier text field. Everything is just as same as that.
Okay, so you can find
And then only instance methods can be declared at IVA or IV action.
You're not having any issues with it.
You're missing your closing curly brace after this super. There's a closing curly brace. And then you got an extra curly brace down here.
But why does that keep saying text field unresolved?
Where is
Field should return. You got a space there. Don't have space.
No,
More errors.
on the left.
She puts some Snapchats.
Problem is you're typing these out, I think.
And I went.
If you use a
and I
code
was like,
completion, it won't put that there
So
for
I
you.
changed it to where only like 2
I
people
couldn't
could
find
see
anything where it
this.
said should return.
But I realized it only does that after. Like it only does that for
Just
the
right here.
new pictures on your story. So all the old ones.
This is,
That is irritating.
text field. Tell the inner, which is God.
That's not what
And
that
then
is.
resign. First responder. Yeah, press enter on that.
I just love it, you.
Something was typed in there incorrectly letter-wise. Now, again, that code completion just saves you so many headaches. And
Well, it's
that might be
good.
something of yours too, it's just like one uppercase versus a lowercase, and I just didn't see it.
I sure looked at all your code and I didn't see anything that did not match. Okay. Let's see. Okay, we just did this one. So we added meal name label.text is equal to text field.text. So you've typed in some information and you're setting the value of the text here, so what it says. That's what the text property does. That's all you need to do to see the result. Should looks like this. Checkpoint. Test your changes. Stop that. And
Oh, what is happening?
yeah, what's it supposed to?
You have two.
Test changes run in simulator. You can select the text field and type text into it, which I did. Click the done button on the keyboard. Okay, I didn't do that. So I type food.
Are we just running it now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, you want to come check this out? This is awesome.
Let me stop it. Start it again.
Explain to me why I all of a sudden have two of the same things inside each other. And this is all the way up there.
See, my keyboard's not popping up.
My keyboard never pops up.
Neither yours.
No, my keyboard doesn't pop up.
Mine does.
Yours does?
Yeah.
Mine does not. It never has.
Falling.
How strange.
Well, here's another problem we have here.
Oh, it does pop.
I have
What?
two of the
You
same
saw it pop up
things,
last time.
but one is in the far left corner.
It didn't pop up this time.
It didn't pop up.
JC can be my witness. It popped up the last time.
Oh, last time it popped up.
Like the previous time we ran them. But it seems like whenever we change the whenever it hides the keyboard,
Uh huh.
maybe that's
Okay, I all of a sudden have two of these and I don't want that. It's a bit
that's gonna be my first. Do I still have all my messages?
Well, that's no good.
Just delete it. Just delete it.
Quit the simulator. We just bring it up, just make sure that wasn't the issue.
Contact.
So I'm pretty sure we followed the tutorial exactly as is.
Please. How do you delete it? So let's What's supposed to be the difference?
It's supposed to pop up the keyboard, and then when you click that button, it updates the text.
Mine never popped up the keyboard even whenever we were doing the other one previously.
User interaction enabled.
What do you want to say?
Hi.
Sorry,
It's like
Such a dumb
the iMessage is off or unavailable. Let me go to settings. There it is. So,
Huh. Well, it's close enough to the end of time anyway, so we'll call it quits there. I'll do some digging into that.
add refresh rate.
We have user interaction enabled over here for that.
I can't get it. RIP.
Well, go ahead and save what you have. We'll continue next time.
How do you save again?
You go up to file, then